You're listening to the Loyalty Minute, the show that helps you build better customer loyalty and more valuable user engagement, with your host, Rob Gallo.
Before getting into this episode, here's a bit of a word of warning for the audio quality. You'll hear a lot of dropout on my guest's side. Luke was going from one room to the other trying to get better internet connectivity. During the pandemic and the close down, we're having to make do with the lack of quality internet connectivity, but do the best to enjoy. Thanks. Welcome, loyal listeners, to another episode of the Loyalty Minute. I'm your host, Rob Gallo, and today I'm eager to chat with Luke Peters. He's the CEO of NewAir, a B2C internet retailer. He's also the host of his own podcast called The Page One, which he will elaborate on. Welcome to the show, Luke.
Thanks for having me, Rob. Excited to speak to your audience and talk about loyalty.
Great. So for those listeners out there who don't know who you are or what NewAir is, perhaps you can give them a bit of a background and the podcast as well.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for the opportunity. So NewAir, we've been around since 2001, and I graduated school, got a degree in microbiology, worked as a hazardous waste scientist, and saw my little brother selling stuff online. And I'm like, what's going on here? This is like the beginning of after the dot-com bust, which actually created a nice sort of business. And what we do is we sell compact appliances. So we sell wine coolers, beer coolers, ice makers, portable air conditioners. We started direct-to-consumer. We still do direct-to-consumer now, but we also do wholesale. So there's definitely a lot of loyalty components when you build into that, because we have our own customers, but we also have Home Depot as a customer and Walmart as a customer, and then we have their customers as our customers in a sense. And we provide customer support for all of them. And so that's what we do here at NewAir. And for the Page One podcast, I have a lot of fun interviewing other entrepreneurs and other consumer product businesses.
Great stuff. All right. So for those listeners who might be new to the show, we like to run the format in the form of a game show. If you like game shows, Jeopardy is one of my favorites. So what we try and do is answer the question in the form of a story instead of a question. Because stories, I think, are meaningful to people. They can kind of get some meat and potatoes out of what it is rather than statistics. So the very first question I'm going to ask you is, what does customer loyalty mean to you, Luke Peters, as a customer, as a consumer?
Well, yeah, no, that's great. I've got a couple of good stories to tell. One of them, I can't tell the name of the company, but let's just say they're a dominant e-commerce player. Okay, and the story here for loyalty, this is a little different angle maybe on what you're used to on loyalty, but I still think it's worthwhile, is that, a lot of companies are loyal to selling through this brand, but this brand lately has been very unloyal to their best companies that they work with. And I think from a business perspective, when you think about loyalty from a consumer perspective, I might say that I love, flying with Delta, for example, and I can work with their points. And, when people fly and they travel, they get used to a loyalty program like that. And that would be an easy story to say how I got upgraded to first class or something like that. But from a business perspective, you have these different customers and you're investing in their platforms, they're investing with you. And for them, when it's just a transaction and they remove any sort of humanity or personalization to the business, it creates a lot of friction. And that's kind of what's happened here even here with this coronavirus situation right now. It's happened to a lot of companies. And find out who their best business partners are. Are you able to pick up a phone and transact and really get person to person, or is everything dictated by a computer and there's no responses and AR are not getting paid? And when you run into a situation like that, it really makes you kind of rethink your business almost and who you're doing business with. And is that the right partner you want to be doing business with in the future? So I think hopefully that story resonates with some of your listeners.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to move your laptop a bit. It's the audio is going in and out, unfortunately.
Got it.
But so to add to that, what you were saying, though, this company, as big as it is, and I'm not going to name the name, but it's obvious, is missing out on the personal interaction is what you're trying to say. So what does that do for you in terms of being loyal to that brand?
Yeah, so this company turns everything into a spreadsheet. And what that does for me is that there is usually in any negotiation, there's going to be a give and take. And so what that does for me is it makes me want to seek alternative ways to grow the business and not be dependent on somebody, because at any one point, they could pull the plug or they could change their business model. And since it's all a spreadsheet, companies have to protect themselves. So I think that's kind of how it would make, myself react.
So you mentioned Delta, right? What other sort of companies are you loyal to, and what would be the reason for that loyalty, you think?
Sure. So another good example is I'm definitely loyal to our bank, Chase. I mean, these guys they've got the personal relationship. They've helped us through this PPP process, which is this coronavirus aid. Mm-hmm. And they advocate for us, and so it's not just about, you're not looking at rates or what they're charging. You're looking at kind of how they support you, because when you're a partner with them, price is one thing, but you find out when times are tough, you'd rather be with a better partner than the cheapest partner. Yeah.
Agreed. So the type of responsiveness that they're giving you?
The type of responsiveness, and also just the thoughtfulness.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. Now I'm hearing my voice coming through your computer, but it just stopped. So as we muddle through the COVID-19 pandemic here, I had a conversation earlier in the week with Don Fox, the CEO of Firehouse Subs, and he mentioned the same thing. And we were talking about Allstate. So Allstate back in the day, he had an issue, and they were the first to respond. And then just this morning, I saw an article about Allstate giving back $600 million to their customers. And I sent them an email and I said, this is proof in the pudding that they're actually going above and beyond, whether customers are even asking for it or not, whether they haven't been driving for a certain period of time, and they're just giving $600 million back in unused insurance premiums, which is phenomenal. Makes me want to switch, but I've been loyal to another company, State Farm, for years that have done right by me. So,
well, I think, by the way, it's a good point that you bring this up. I just spoke with someone earlier and a couple people, and right now, since this is a worldwide problem, you're seeing a lot of people come together, and this is a great opportunity for people, especially companies, though, to show that loyalty. It'll be remembered for a long time. And just with the crisis, there's companies are coming together that wouldn't before. Companies are donating even when they're having a hard time. Your example is a good one, but even along the whole supply chain, you've been seeing that. I know Facebook they donated, I believe, $100 million to small business, which I thought, as far as a loyalty program, was super smart. I know Facebook has made a ton, but they're aligning themselves with small businesses who essentially, that's their revenue base from all the advertising that they're doing. And I thought that was a brilliant loyalty plan. Sheryl Sandberg was rolling that out, and thought it was a great example.
All right. You got to tip the lid of your laptop back a little bit. as silly as that sounds. There you go. Better. It sounded better up there. So let me ask you this then, Luke, as a marketing professional in your field, can you share with us some of the pain points that you have when it comes to creating and maintaining customer loyalty? Now, you mentioned you were B2C, but you're still really B2B2C in the sense, right? You're selling to big box stores that are selling your products to end users.
Well, we also sell direct. So we have our own website. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. So we're doing it. We're doing all of the above. And you know, the pain points are generally, the thing is with a lot of companies, so you have the Amazons of the world and other big companies that can sell, since they sell everything, they can always get a lot of repeat purchases. The struggle for small and mid-sized companies is to get that repeat purchase, because maybe you only sell a specific category of product, right? So loyalty is even more important at that point, because your customer may not be back in your business for 6 months or a year, and you've got to have a way for them to remember you. And so generally that's going to start with a special brand promise. Mm-hmm. Could be a warranty. You have to have the best customer service. You have to track your customer service and look at your NPS scores or ENPS scores. But there's going to be reviews. So along the way, here's the touch points. We can offer a better return option, just in case things don't work out for the customer. We can offer an improved warranty. And then we can also offer a personal touch by calling the customer after the fact or down the road and checking in on their product. And I think that one, which does take a lot of time, is a touch point that can improve loyalty more than what the big guys are doing. But they might have more loyalty because they have a wider range of SKUs, and the customer can come back at any certain point. So for us, we found those to be nice drivers on the loyalty side.
Yeah, that's true. And I think about it this way too. I mean, I have a refrigerator in my house. I have one. I mean, I might not need another one for 10 or 15 years, hopefully, but they may have other products that they make that they can cross-sell. But it's not a high volume type of sale of what you're doing. So you're dealing with customers at a horizontal rather than vertical, in the sense that you're dealing with one customer that may have several products, but not a myriad of products like an Amazon would. So there's no loyalty program, so to say, for someone that's in that particular field. I wouldn't think, right? Meaning like you're not earning points for something like that.
No. So the points is a tougher one to deploy on my particular business, but you can still think of loyalty in different ways. Like, for example, who are the customers loyal to? So they're loyal to influencers oftentimes. And so we can take advantage of that relationship, and we can work with influencers to build loyalty to our site. Or so for example, if there's an influencer in the wine category who's trusted and they built out their own audience, and they talk about our product, a customer can jump in the top of the funnel in the content world and find Amazon or Home Depot or everybody else with our product, but they can also hear that influencer talking about NewAir, and they may be more prone to come to our site because they trust that influencer. There's some loyalty around that influencer. So maybe not trust me, if there was a way to deploy that and create points, it would be appealing. It's a little bit harder because of the time frame between purchases for the consumer.
Yeah, that's the biggest hurdle in any loyalty program is really the amount of time it takes to earn a reward. That's why 57% of people who have a loyalty program as a member, they abandon it because they say it takes too long. This is from the COLAQ 2017 loyalty census. And that, there's 3.6 billion loyalty cards in distribution right now, yet the average person has about 19 or 20 of them, but they only use or active in 4. And they're probably the majors. You think like the airlines, maybe fuel, casino, and even maybe some restaurants. I know Landry's does a good job with their loyalty program. They do well with it. But so let me ask you this then. Can you think of a success or a failure in a customer loyalty enhancement strategy that some listeners would find helpful? Doesn't have to be for NewAir, it could be for anything, but just.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of Chipotle. It's a bummer that they're all closed down right now. I literally walk right across the street and I eat it there 3 times a week when they were open. And I remember they had that Listeria, I think it was Listeria. They had a couple scares with the food. And after they did that, they put in a loyalty program of you buy a certain amount of burritos or bowls, and then you get a free one. But you only had to buy, I believe, something like 4 to get a free one. It was a really good deal. And I remember looking at the financials. Their stock got crushed during that time. I wish I had bought it. They put in this loyalty program. There were lines out the door. They had other ones where they added in a bag of chips, which is probably super cheap for them to add on to it. And they were able to kind of come back from that food scare, and their business just came roaring back. And the stock was just on a tear until recently. Yeah. So I thought that was a good one. And they only did it for a limited time, by the way. They did it for maybe about 6 weeks until they trained the customer to go eat at Chipotle. And then they pulled it away. And they also had options. Like you say, you can have the card, but they had the option, obviously, with an app. And to your point, people eat there often enough where I think it was worthwhile putting it on their phone.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. So that's, I think they did a really good job with making it a comeback. And the fear of missing out by only having it for a certain time period kind of got their loyalists back in the swing of things to get beyond the scare. So yes,
Yep.
something like that. So from an internal standpoint, do you have or have worked with any type of organizations in your past that are forward thinking, or is innovation something that really holds them back?
So what do you mean by that, though? Companies that also have loyalty programs, or?
Well, it doesn't have to have a loyalty points program, but in creating customer loyalty is exactly that. So customer loyalty goes way beyond that. Obviously, it's customer service. It becomes part of the corporate culture. But see, it seems so easy for some companies to do, but yet, you can get $1 billion company, $1 trillion company almost like Apple on the telephone and walk you through a problem. But then when you get to a small retail store, you try and get someone on the phone and no one's to be had. And those are the things to me that are the most important when it comes to building customer loyalty, is the experience with the brand and how people feel about the brand, right? People are loyalists to Apple because they feel part of the Apple culture. I'm an Apple user. So it's the same way with Starbucks. People think, all right, I'm a Starbucks coffee goer and drinker, but they do a good job of building that culture. I guess what I was trying to ask is, has there been any companies that you've worked with that have either done a great job at that or a terrible job that our listeners can kind of glean some information off from their own, for their own businesses?
Yeah, for sure. I would give so here's an example of a bad one. And that would be, I don't know if you're listening, I think this may be more of a Southern California-based company, but they're called Fry's Electronics.
Yeah.
They have an online site as well. Okay, so Fry's Electronics, they were in a tough position because they really dominated locally all electronics, like computer parts and stuff like that, especially back in the early 2000s. But the service at that store was so poor, and I think what they should have done is just increase their margins by 10% and had a totally different policy, because they treated it like kind of a criminal. When you walk in the store, there was a lot of theft. So everybody was initially a criminal. And if you wanted to return a product, you stood in line for 2 hours. And the folks there were knowledgeable but not helpful. So you kind of had this perfect storm of, you kind of had to know what you wanted. You had to do your own shopping and educate yourself. So you'd have to look online. I think what it did is it drove everybody to look online, and then slowly trends change for them to just go buy online because of the way that this experience was of going into Fry's Electronics. And the interesting thing is, I think it's a cultural thing with that company, because people that do business with them say the same thing. They don't get paid back. A lot of inventory is on assignment. They're a difficult company to deal with. So I thought that was a kind of an interesting thing.
I remember CompUSA was the same way. Do you remember CompUSA back then?
I do remember CompUSA. Yeah, they went out as well. Yeah. But then you have Best Buy, who's not, and Best Buy is around.
Mind-boggling to me, because even before them, it was Circuit City, which was a well-run company. Exactly. That was one of the companies that Good to Great did a big comparison study, and it did very well. I don't know if you read Jim Collins' book, Good to Great.
I did.
Yeah. Yep. So, and then it just disappeared. I mean, I don't know if it was mismanagement or whatever, but I would think Best Buy right now is kind of just a visual showcase for people that are going in, looking, and then buying it online anyway. But yet they're still in business, and they're still pretty helpful when you go in there, So
they're doing a good job. They're like the last one standing in consumer electronics.
Yeah, at least nationwide. I know back in the Northeast when I lived up in New York, PC Richard. It's been around 100 years, but they sell other stuff. I know Best Buy does too, but interesting stuff. All right, so listen, before we wrap this up, what sort of actionable advice, Luke Peters, could you give to our listeners that they can implement today? It's just some little tidbits that you think they would help attract and retain more customers.
Sure. So I think the first thing is from a business perspective is know all of your customer service numbers. So when you're talking about loyalty and retaining customers, not everybody has the right software. And if you don't, you should have all the right software so you can not only measure how long your interactions are, but how much they're costing you and what the result of those interactions were. Are they happy interactions or unhappy interactions? Mm-hmm. Is anybody screening calls or not? I think for like an easier one, because that is difficult, by the way, if a lot of it is happening on a call, you're then going to have to put in some sort of email or other type of action where a question is asked, and then you're going to get some sort of score. Beyond that, what I would say is as much as you can, move to chat if customers are assisting clients. I really love chat if it's done right. I hate chat when it's a robot.
Yeah.
So have a human being handle the chat and have your initial response time under 15 seconds, which is what we've pushed our team to. And when it was not successful, our response time was a minute. So we had to push that down to 15 seconds or less if you can. And I think you actually increase customer happiness there. I think they get frustrated on the phone. I think there's less of a sort of like personalities and voices can be different on phones that can sometimes cause people to get upset. But here it's just text. And if the people write politely and quickly, I actually think that the response is better. So what we've done is we haven't hit this yet, but on average, try to have more chats than calls. And while you can't dictate that, what you can do is you can make it so your chat is so easy on your website. It's so good that you will hopefully get more customers to chat than to call. But what I wouldn't do is just totally get rid of your phone number, because that'll just tee off a bunch of customers, because some of them do want to call, right? And so you don't want to be like PayPal and make it impossible to get a hold of you.
Yeah, so, especially for me, I'm an old school guy. I love being able to pick up the phone and get someone who speaks perfect English and understands what I'm trying to say. So I think you hit the nail on the head, Luke, because, I did find one company, it was actually Xfinity, that had a very smart artificial intelligence with their chat, in the sense that the chat, I knew it was automated, and it told me right up front that it was automated, and it gave me a list of numbers. So it said for customer service, general, press 1, or type in 1. It was a text chat back and forth, right? So reply number 1 if it was about the internet, number 2 if it was about TV, number 3, whatever, and if it was billing or whatever. And then it kind of asked me the right questions, but it did finally get me on the phone with an agent. But you're right, it can be frustrating if it's not done right.
Very much.
Yeah. Well, listen, I think this was really, really great stuff, Luke, and I definitely appreciate your time. So if listeners wanted to get a hold of you directly and listen to your podcast, I'm going to put it in the show notes, but how would be the best to do that?
Oh, great. Thanks, Rob. Yeah. So the podcast is the Page One podcast with the number 1. So if they type in page space 1 space podcast, you'll find it on any search engine. We're hosted all over the place, and you'll be able to download it. But obviously through iTunes, you can find it there. And we talk to other successful business leaders in the consumer products space. And we talk about supply chain, consumer products, and all of those categories. And really having a lot of fun doing that. And also anybody's free to connect with me on LinkedIn or luke@newair.com.
Great. Well, Luke, I want to thank you for your time and sharing your insights on customer loyalty, brand loyalty during the COVID-19 pandemic, which is just still mind-boggling. To the listeners, I want to thank you for being a loyal listener and investing some of your valuable time with us. If you feel you received value from the show, we would definitely appreciate a 5-star review on your favorite podcast streaming service. If you think you know someone else who might value and enjoy listening to this podcast, please do share. That's how we grow. To reference this and other Loyalty Minute episodes, please visit theloyaltyminute.com. Enjoy.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for your next edition of the Loyalty Minute.